board now, back with Rachel McDonald. On this video, we're going to be talking, about Queen of Spades from 2021. Yes, I had to specify because 2 years ago we did a Russian movie with a similar title. It had a subtitle, that one. And last October we did the second movie in that franchise. So this is becoming a bit of an October tradition. But this year we're doing the Canadian remake from a couple of years ago. It's the Candyman style premise, and that it's all to do with saying it into the mirror and a certain ceremony, and it involves these teenagers who get hold of this off the internet. And I would say it's a remake but also a soft reboot, because it sort of does the same plot pretty much as the original movie, except it just references that movie as well. So the idea is then the characters in this have heard of that original, what happened in Russia. You can find our reviews of the other two films from the previous 2 years, which overall we quite liked them to different degrees. Certainly the first one, and I know Rachel was quite positive on 2, which I didn't mind too much, but I think Rachel was a bit more positive.
I think so,
on that.
Yeah.
Rachel, what did you think of Queen of Spades 2021?
Well, let's just say I now understand why it only has 3.7 on IMDb. I found this movie so boring, just so dull. Oh my God. I didn't come away from it with a lot of positives. I felt that they telegraphed way too much, way too early. I mean, obviously, if you come into this having watched the Russian ones, which we have, you will know some of what it is. But I feel like they gave us all the information, within the first 20 minutes of the film. So there wasn't even really like the first couple of films, you at least have a bit of a mystery. You know, they're trying to figure out who the Queen of Spades is, what her deal is. The second movie in particular really went into the mythology of where she comes from and what her backstory was. If I remember correctly, they had that whole thing where they discovered what she'd done to the kids and stuff like that. Whereas with this movie, they just gave it to you in an info dump, almost right at the beginning. This is the Queen of Spades, this is how you summon her, this is who she is, and now she's coming for us. I think the majority of the acting in this was truly atrocious. Those two teen boys in particular were so bad. We were talking briefly off screen, and we mentioned there is a Russian guy that they kind of go to for information. He was possibly the best part of the movie, because I feel like that actor just kind of didn't give a crap, so he was just kind of doing whatever he wanted and not really taking things too seriously. And there is a bit towards the end, which we'll talk about when we get into spoilers, where he really lets loose and just starts hamming it up and going crazy. I also felt like this movie looked really cheap. I didn't look up what the budget for this movie was, but it looked so cheap. The opening scene alone had some really bad green screen work going on, and some of the effects were really bad. And I also felt that a lot of the sets, I made a note here. I was the sets are so bare. I know that the main character and her mum are obviously supposed to be a lower income earning house. It's a single mother who's working, a janitorial job to make ends meet. But it didn't even feel like a real home. It felt like they'd found an abandoned apartment, threw a few bits and pieces in there and said, yes, we're going to pretend this is a home. It didn't feel like that to me. The only set that felt like a proper set to me was when they went to the guy's house towards the end of the movie. So there was that. There were no scares in this movie, absolutely none. Even someone who isn't a horror fan would not be scared in this movie. Obviously when you watch a lot of horror, you get desensitized, but I felt like every scare was telegraphed to the audience before it happened. You just saw the jump scares coming a mile away. And I didn't even feel like this one had any kind of atmosphere. You know how sometimes we've talked about movies that are maybe not that great, but they can evoke a creepy atmosphere. I think even the first couple of movies, the Russian ones, they had a bit of an eerie feel to them. And I have to say, even the bloody Queen of Spades herself, when we saw her in this, she wasn't even that scary. And I swear her design is ripped right off from The Woman in Black from 2010. She looked almost exactly like that character.
Possibly,
and I was like,
yeah.
oh God. So yeah, so I was not impressed with this film, and it was only an hour and a half, but it took so long to get through. At one point I looked at my phone and I was like, how do I still have 40 minutes of this film left? It's ridiculous. So yeah, look, I remember we didn't mind the Russian versions, and they had some fun stuff, but this one I felt it was just not worth the remake. It was not worth whatever little pittance of money they decided to put into it.
This could have been just shot in our bathrooms or something, or bedroom. Like it just looked like something we could have shot. Like it was so amateurish, and like just comparing it to like the original movie, because that really used the Russian setting very well.
Yes,
like it had a very distinct style to it, and the direction, because we looked it up because Cindy, watching it on stream with me, made this comment about how like on her screen it seemed like a very widescreen sort of film, and like I looked up the aspect ratio, and apparently it's the aspect ratio which is meant to be best for like landscape shots, and they totally wasted that, because I noticed how repetitive like the aerial shots were getting. Like at a certain point, you know, when they went to the Russian guy's house, they literally did 3 aerial shots in about 5 minutes. It was crazy.
Yeah.
But they just looked rubbish. Like they didn't like there didn't really feel like a reason to do an aerial shot. Like certainly not 3. And they just, compared with like the way they did those sorts of shots in the Russian movie, it was like night and day. And it's a shame because, you know, Canadian made film, there are some distinct features about Canada, then you can capture a good like landscape or something, but they just didn't do it. I guess they just didn't have the budget to do it, and they were very lazy. It was like watching paint dry, this film. It was so bad and so slow. Like I think they forgot the use of editing in this film with a lot of the scenes, because like there's literally a scene where the mother is ringing round work to try and get off work for the night, and we see her ring 2 different people to see if she can get her shift covered, and the fact that she ends up going in anyway, like it's like, well, what are you doing? If it was me and I thought my daughter might be in jeopardy, I would say screw the job. I would stay home for the night. Like, I know. They should understand. But like also, that's an example of what I'm talking about. That scene just seemed to go on forever. Like we don't need to see her ringing 2 different people for the same thing. We get the gist of the scene, but it was just like that. Like scenes just, the conversations were so plodding, and the scenes just dragged on and on. And yeah, it was just boring. It's like they were going for this very mundane sort of like everyday feel, but they forgetting like it's meant to be a movie, and there's nothing. The acting was very wooden, I agree, especially from the guys, and the guys were super annoying, so it was a relief when they got killed off. But those 2 actors were very, very bad. I agree that the kills were like telegraphed, and it was just predictable. They were just running through these characters, and you could literally tell the hierarchy. You could tell what order everyone was going to be killed in. And like you just had some really rotten CGI effects, like the CGI stuff in the swimming pool scene was really
that was
bad.
Terrible.
And like you had the mirror effects, that was really bad. And it's almost like, if you don't have the budget to do this stuff, then don't try it really. But then maybe don't make this movie, because you know you're gonna need a little bit of that stuff for the movie to work. But unfortunately, like the characters weren't engaging. Like the young girl was okay, I guess. Like her acting wasn't too bad, but I mean, maybe that's in comparison with the other characters.
With the others, this kind of running theme of like they kept like it was like we were supposed to look down on the single mother for having to go to work to make a living to take care of her daughter because she was always leaving her daughter alone. Like the neighbor or the babysitter, whoever it was, she, you know, a couple of times she like has a go at the mum, like, oh, you're not here, I have to take care of your daughter. But it's like, yeah, but she's a single mother. She has to work. She has to go out and have a job. And I didn't like that the movie was trying to make me feel like she was a bad mother because she kept leaving her daughter at home alone. It's like her daughter is what, like 14 or 15. It's definitely at an age where you can stay home by yourself. And again, single mom who needs to make a living. And I feel like maybe if the daughter was younger, like maybe 8 or 9, and didn't quite understand, oh, mum needs to make a living. Yeah, it would make more sense. But given that she's like 14 or 15, it's like by that age, you kind of understand that your parents can't always be around. And yeah, I again, like, the characterization of this is so thin anyway. Like, none of the characters were endearing. We didn't really get any kind of depth or emotional hooks to them. I mean, they were obviously trying to make us feel for like the mother and the single mother and the daughter, but it just wasn't working. Like, the two characters, the actors didn't have chemistry. I didn't buy them as a mother and daughter. I didn't buy the supposed like bond, or like when the mum towards the end starts being like, you know, I have to save my daughter. They didn't give us enough of a relationship to begin with to really care in the end, you know? Like, at the end, the mother's running around trying to save her daughter and you're just watching it like, whatever. Like, you have no emotional investment in this movie because the characters are just so blah and so paper thin. They gave us all the information about the Queen of Spades. They didn't really explain why she's coming after them. It was just like, oh, you summoned her and now she's going to kill you. But it's like, why? What's the backstory? What's the reason? You know, like you likened it to Candyman. You know, we know what Candyman's motivation is. We know who he is. We know what happened to him, and we get that emotional payoff when he tries to kidnap Virginia Madsen's character. But with this, it was like, why is she doing this? It's like they took the story from the Russian one and just went, we're just going to use this, but we're not going to explore it or add anything to it. You know what I'm trying to say? Like, there was just no depth to this film.
Well, okay, to be fair, like, because it's been a couple of years since we saw that one, so do you remember there being a reason in that? Like, it could have just been they've released the curse sort of thing.
I think in the first one we weren't given a reason, but the mystery was part of the movie. But I do remember in the second one we got a really good look into the backstory for the character. It more felt like this one, like they took this general idea, like Bloody Mary, and just went, let's just make a scary movie out of that. Yeah. But then they didn't really do anything with the concept. They just went, yep, you summon her, she appears. Now you're all just going to die in like really horrible ways. But they don't really tell us why. Like, why is she doing this? Possession of the film, which was so random and weird and new. Like, I don't remember that being in the other two films. So maybe that was something they just decided to put in this film, but it didn't really make much sense.
Why are you doing this, you idiots, when you know you're going to die? Like, yes. I think they have to come up with a good reason to justify it, because like, one of the characters just say that. It's like, well, why would you do it? Are you just doing it for viral stuff? And that's kind of the impression we get. But it's just stupid, like, because a lot of times if you watch a movie like this, you maybe just assume that the characters are naive. They don't believe anything's going to happen. But they seem to be saying in this, we know then this is real. We know this is dangerous. But yeah, they still want to do it. It doesn't really make a lot of sense. And
no, it's dumb.
Because in that scene, we get like a ridiculous like plot exposition from like the glasses character. He just rambles on and on in that scene. It's like, in case you haven't seen the Russian original, here it all is like laid out for you. So but
it's just one big info dump. They don't give it to you in like an interesting way or like a mysterious way. It's not like the characters discovering bits and pieces. That's what I mean. Like, we just get all of this information just dumped on you, and then it's like, well, what was the point? Like, they don't really do anything with it. And it was so clunkily delivered. And the dialogue in this movie, so fun. It was just, fantastic script writing at play here. But it was just, and it also felt really disjointed, this movie, you know, like there wasn't really a good, I think I actually made a note that like the plotting and the pacing of this movie was just really, it's so badly plotted and paced, and everything felt so unnatural. You know, like we're just moving from scene to scene to scene. scene without anything to link these scenes, without like a common narrative thread. It was just like a series of just characters and situations that didn't really link up together. And and then you add onto the fact that like all of these scenes just playing out one after another, just so boring and so repetitive and so mundane.
He did a book apparently, so like the one.
That's right. Yes.
Yeah. So this is a bit like, again, a bit ridiculous. I think it's the sort of film where you notice the plot holes more because it's such a dull film. But there's lots to. I mean, I can't believe that this idiot read a whole book. For starters, but I mean,
I know, right?
And I don't know who this guy is, like, doing a book on it, and then this guy, because another plot hole with that is, how did he get his Skype address? I mean, it's not like you put your Skype address on your book or like on your public thing, so I have no idea how he got his Skype address. And that stuff's really silly because like them exchanging messages is like, my brother died or something like that, or someone died.
Yeah, mother and the daughter go there in the end. The mother's like, we need to get to the hospital, which, fair enough. And the Russian dude's like, no, it's too late. Although he doesn't tell us why it's too late. Like, we don't get an explanation for why we can't just take her to the hospital. And then apparently this Russian dude just has like all this medical equipment lying around somewhere.
Yeah,
because
exactly.
At one point in time at one point we see her like in her apartment and she's in her bed, but they've got all this hospital equipment there. Really cheesy, over the top exorcism, which again, the Russian guy gives us a little bit of amusement because he's so hammy in this scene. And and also the mother. Okay, the mother must have like superhuman strength, okay? Because her daughter is roughly the same height as her, roughly the same size as her, and yet this mother is able to scoop her daughter up like she's a toddler and run all the way downstairs with her in her arms.
Oh,
it's like,
well, that's true. I didn't even think.
Really? Yeah, I wasn't buying it. I'm like, I'm not buying some 5'4" tiny petite woman being able to pick up another woman exactly her size. It just wasn't working. So yeah, and there was just all these little things like that in this movie that just kind of took you out of the reality of the situation and took you out of the movie, and it was just so slow and so plodding.
But him going crazy was quite funny, and the exorcism stuff came out of nowhere because up to now it hadn't been that sort of movie. And it was and this is the stuff that I feel is a bit added to this movie because apart from that, I think it is almost a straight remake. I think it is almost like beat for beat, which is a bit annoying, but like I think it is. Apart from that, I think that's the stuff they've added pretty much. But the problem with that scene is it just drags on. Like, finally it gets going a bit, but it takes way too long to get going. And so the stuff with the bird was annoying. Like I wanted to strangle that bird, and it was so like they could have cut to the chase a lot quicker, and some of his methods were just so bizarre. Like it was all over the place. Like you had the stuff with the cat, you had like the stuff with the ring. It's like, give her the ring or something like that. Because
something about, he said like the ring is cursed and that's why she's coming. But it's like, but we literally never heard anything about that before. It was like and that's the thing. It felt like they were just making stuff up as they went along. And it's like we went from a movie that was like 3/4 a haunting movie, and then all of a sudden in the last quarter it becomes a possession film. But this was something that we'd never heard of, and then all of a sudden, boom, the daughter's possessed. And so bizarre. But then somehow the Russian dude manages to get her out of, like, get the witch out of her and put it into him, and then he like dives off the roof to kill himself with her inside of him. I don't know, it was all like very confusing. He has a birthday party and everything's fine, where they pan to the poor cat, and the poor cat is possessed. And I was like, no, the movie with the kitty being possessed. Now I hate the movie. It's like, leave the poor kitty alone.
Well, they were planning a sequel with the cat as the possessed.
With an evil cat?
Yeah, clearly.
Well, I'm glad that didn't happen.
It's certainly a memorable ending. I'll give them that. But
True.
Another bit was really badly done, which is an example of how amateurish it is the death of the friend with the knives. Because It basically stabbed her hands. It didn't stab anywhere on her body that would actually kill her, and yet she died. Like, it stabbed through her hands. Like,
we were supposed to assume that it got the wrists. And that's where it got. Like, she stabbed her on the arm and opened up, like, her arteries. But, like, it was so badly telegraphed.
Done,
But, yeah, it was so badly done. That, yeah, because I was the same. I was like, she stabbed her arm and now she's dead? That doesn't make any sense.
Because also there's a bit in that sequence where, like, I think it's either her or the other girl. I think it must be her. She uses, like, something like one of those trays as self-defense.
Yes, like a metal tray or something.
It's a metal tray, and it actually breaks from, like, her. No,
it's
film.
So bad.
No way.
So bad.
The props are so bad.
The thing about this film was just so bad, and not even in a so bad it's good kind of way. You know, at least that you can have fun with. This was just blah.
Yeah, this was blah.
Yeah.
What would you rate it?
I'm going to go with 1 out of 10, and even that's generous. I'm really just giving it a 1 because really I liked the hammy Russian guy, and I guess the cat ending was at least a little bit of a surprise. But like, I just found this film so boring, so amateur looking, bad acting, bad scripting, and not even any kind of good scares or any kind of atmosphere or visuals to kind of get me going. So I'm going with 1 out of 10 for this one. What about you?
For 2, I guess.
Like, okay, that's fair enough.
I've seen worse, but yeah, not much,
True.
Not much worse. But no, it's very amateurish and very boring. So yeah, 2, a 2 and a 1. So that kind of sums it up.
I think that's fair. I think that's very fair.
Okay, so let us know your thoughts if you've seen the movie in the comments below. Like and subscribe. We will be here reviewing movies all October, as well as a couple of other things. We're going to be looking at The Fall of the House of Usher, the new Netflix Mike Flanagan series. So that's something we'll be covering this month as well. But yeah, let us know what you guys have been watching. And Rachel, if you want to promote your channel.
Guys, you can follow me, Rachel McDonald, video essays on TV shows and movies, mostly 90s and naughty stuff. I do tend to stick to a specific era, and I should have some stuff up for Halloween. So my Tumblr and Twitter also linked through my YouTube, and Keith will usually put a link in the description for you guys, so come and follow me everywhere.
Okay, thanks guys. Keep watching horror movies and better ones than this, and we'll see you again soon. Goodbye.